Hey, it is the Microsoft Virtual Academy. We are continuing our introduction to ASP.NET. It's a 101 overview of ASP.NET.
Hopefully it's been 101 so far.
Hopefully so. Maybe you're new. Maybe you've been doing other aspects of ASP.NET and you're new to ASP.NET 5. We've been starting very basics, going through all of the detail that maybe you miss from other discussions of ASP.NET.
Yeah.
So in the last module, we talked about model view controller, how that works. We passed data from a controller to a view. That's the model. But we passed it in a view
data bag.
A view
collection.
bag. If we look at the code there, we stuck it into a view data.
Yeah.
And this is just a hash table.
Yes, it's just so the problem with this.
Dictionary.
There's a few. The problem with this is convenient, right? It's amazingly convenient. I just throw some text in here and I grab it out of the other side.
Or an object, I suppose, right?
Or an object. Now the problem is that it's not strongly typed. Right?
By strongly typed, you mean that I just have a string here, and
you get a string out, right? And you don't really know what they are.
And then when I go over to index the view, and I pull that information out. Was it index or where we had that? We had that in a view called
in about,
foo.
I think. Oh, foo, yeah, foo or about or something.
It was in about. You're absolutely right. See how I'm doing that really quickly? I want to remind you of that. Control comma. Type the file that you want.
You'd be amazed
at
enter. These sort of keyboard shortcuts seem trivial, but
no, they matter.
The amount of time that you spend doing these things adds up over the course of a day and a week.
Because I could have done control comma, or I could have done this. And I think you're wasting time, right?
Yeah.
And the grunting and the groaning also. So here I'm saying view data, and then I pull it out of that dictionary. And again, what if I misspell that string?
Then you just get nothing.
No one's going to warn me until I run it.
That's right. Whereas the advantage of strongly typed, as I said the word strongly typed, which people may or may not know. The advantage of when something being strongly typed means that the compiler is going to tell you if you make a mistake, if you get it wrong. And you're going to get IntelliSense for it, and we're going to know that it's a string, and we're going to know what things you can do with the string, and all that sort of stuff.
Exactly. So let's do this. If you go over to docs.asp.net, which we love, this is living documentation, and notice that it may look slightly different when you visit it because it's changing all the time.
It is.
And I'm going to go down here and say
you can even help make it change.
You can actually get involved. It's true. Anything that has a little wrench by it, you can help write. Those are not done yet. So I can click your first ASP.NET 5 application using Visual Studio.
Yeah.
And what we're going to do over the next couple of modules is talk about the difference between server-side and client-side behavior. And when I click on that, I'm going to come down to where it says adding server-side behavior. Now in this example, Steve, who wrote this, makes a server info object that describes a server, and then he fills that object up and then fills it in a view. We'll do something like this, except I think we'll use maybe people instead of server info.
He uses some stuff in the .NET framework that is not. We don't need to explain right now. It's easy.
All right. So let's look at foo again and remind ourselves what foo looks like, and then we'll modify foo.
It could be the most important view that's ever been written.
Foo is where it's at. And then a little bit later, we'll talk about Bootstrap. And then you also make a note that we've got a Bootstrap class.
Yeah.
Virtual Academy Bootstrap, and I'll mention that again later. We're going to have a bunch of other kind of like sidecar classes that you can take. So as you're going through the MVC, the Intro to ASP.NET class, there's 5 or 6 other Virtual Academy classes that you can dig deeper on these different topics.
Yeah. So people could play along with us at home here, right? By following along with your first ASP.NET application on the docs, right? If they wanted to.
Yep. Okay. So here's foo. Was it foo or about? Yeah. So about is the one that did the for loop.
Yep.
And foo is the one that just returned a string. I guess we'll just mess with about.
Yeah.
So I'm going to declare tab bankruptcy here. And then what that means is I've got all these tabs open. I'm just going to go Window, close all documents, because that's just too much going on. And we're going to open up About, right there. And then we're going to open up the About view. All right. So I'm going to remove this information here. And I think for the purposes of what we're doing, I like to do this right-click, open another view. That way we can see them both at the same time. So we've got our view on the side there, and we've got our controller over here. So we're inside of the home controller right now. We can make another class for our people. This is going to be our model. Now this person model, we could put it in another file,
We could, absolutely, we could.
but we could also put it in line for now and move it to another file later.
Yeah, we can do that. I mean, for
that
the
okay?
sake of it's absolutely okay. Well, yeah,
It's not tidy,
It's not tidy,
but
it
it's
is not
reasonable.
it is not technically incorrect. Right.
Right.
You can do this. It's fine.
so I said public class person. Now I can type in public string first name, right? Or I could make it a property and I could use a shortcut. So I can say prop.
Yeah.
You see here, code snippet for an automatically implemented property. I'm going to type in tab, string, tab, first name. Spell it right. All right, enter, prop, tab, string, tab, last name, enter, prop, tab. Oops, it's too fast. Prop, tab, date time. This will we'll make a birthday.
Birthday. Nice.
Birthday. Enter. All right.
Awesome.
So there's a model, and again, we could put that off in another folder.
You'll often see that, like if you do file new with auth and everything already, you'll already have a folder called models, which has some models in it, and you would maybe just put this in there or something like that.
Right. Now, right now, as you point out, I've got a controllers folder and a views folder.
Yeah.
I could put that class in there, name it models. Well, the views folder name is magic. It's important. It's convention. The controllers is also nice to have.
Yes.
Models isn't magic. There's no the models folder. You can call it whatever.
How you
You call it
organize
data
stuff,
objects. You call it whatever makes you happy.
Yeah.
But convention would be to call it models, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So if we go back and look at our docs, what he's doing here is he's got his server info, right? And then he just adds it to about. Now what's interesting here is that we're mixing the use of view bags and objects. So let's do the same thing, which is interesting. So here
Yeah.
we've got some, I'm in the home controller. Let's make our message say, here is a person. That's a string that's going to be displayed. And we'll get rid of foo message. Now I'm going to say var p equals new.
So here, whilst he's making up this person object, here you would typically do something like, person getter service dot get me a person. Talk to my database, pull some data out of it, ping some other website that has the data that I need in it and construct this object. Typically this is where this is the business of Scott's business slide earlier on, which is now I'm going and retrieving some data from somewhere, maybe I'm generating some of this information and then I'm giving it to a view, and the view and the Razor page that we've got there is going to take the data that we just retrieved or we just generated, and it's going to take the markup syntax that we have in our Razor view, and it's going to generate a HTML page which is effectively the combination of all of that data and the markup so that it looks the way that you want it to look on the page. It's kind of what's happening here.
So I've just done this and made myself older than I am, because I'm never going to tell you people how old I really am. So I've made a person, and notice that when I hit inside of here, I'm getting IntelliSense. So
This is the strongly typedness that we talked about
right, so you
earlier
see
on.
how it knows that a person has a first name automatically. And all kind of in one line, even though I've split this up across multiple lines, I'm making a person and I'm setting 3 properties all at the same time.
Yes.
And you notice my date time is here.
Yeah.
Now, as Glenn said, that could have come from a database.
Yeah.
That could have come from a web server. It could have come from a file on disk.
Yes.
It's really up to
Yes.
It's really
that's
up to you.
Just up to you, however you think you need to generate your model. I mean, obviously, the no good system has a person in it that isn't Scott Hanselman. So, every good system has to have a Scott Hanselman person object, and we're satisfying that requirement right now.
So here where we say view, when we do that, it says that there's some overloads.
Yep.
Okay? Overloads, I'm going to zoom in there.
Zounk.
You see how it
Yes.
says 2 of 4.
Yeah.
So when you say view is a function, a method, and there's,
It's a method on the controller class that we're inheriting from,
in fact, that's a great point. It's the same as saying this dot view.
Yeah.
And there are different versions of them. There's regular view.
Yeah.
There's a view that takes a model, There's a view that takes a name of a view, and
Yeah.
then there's one that takes both.
The name of a view is interesting, right? Like we said earlier, that when you said return view, it had to be the name of the method. Effectively, we were saying, yeah, assumes home bar, right? But you could say return a view and then give it the name, and then the name of the view it would look for would be something else instead of the default that we set
Right.
in other conventions.
So we talked about how you could have a view in a folder called shared.
Yeah.
But in this case, I could be explicit and say, no, I'm going to reuse.
I want to give you
a
the view. Yeah, I want to give you the
reuse
foo view. Yeah.
One of the great things about MVC as a pattern is not just the separation of concerns, meaning every object does its own thing and doesn't try to do double duty, triple duty, but also the reuse of code.
Yeah.
If you write a view once and it's useful, or even a part of a view, a partial view, you can reuse those as well.
Absolutely. That's often
So-
where the shared comes in. You will put partial bits and pieces of a view.
Exactly. You can compose views with other pieces.
Yeah.
So right now, about is going to use the about CSHTML, but how do I get person out of here and into this view? I put in P, because P is my person right there.
Yeah.
And you'll notice when I select P, Visual Studio actually selects them all
Yeah.
to show me all the other P's that exist somewhere else. Okay, so now I'm saying a view. This one is going to, if I understand correctly, assume home about. Okay,
Yep.
so that's
Yes.
over here. So we're going to keep that there for you to see. So just for context, I can put a comment up here. Get home about.
Yeah, because we know early on in the earlier modules we saw that when you browse in the browser to home about, we're sending a get request to the browser, right? And we'll see soon that you can control which methods get called when you do a get versus some of the other verbs that you can do in HTTP
Right.
requests.
So here's about. Right now we pull out title and message, and here's our message right there. How do I get a hold of person, and what do I do, Glenn, to
In
tell
here.
this about
So-
person?
A view, in a view you have the concept of a model that this view is supposed to be using. And you can do that up at the top there, above that like at view data thing. You could say at model with all lowercase, and you can give it the type that your model is going to be. So in this case you would say at model person, right?
Okay.
And you
why is
you
it-
don't have a squiggly, and that's because back in our C# class, we saw at the top of our C# class we had all of those using statements.
Right. The using was a way of saying that these things live in different namespaces. Right now, person, for whatever reason, probably not a good idea,
Using
lives
this
in controllers.
namespace.
Maybe we ought to move that into its own place.
Maybe.
So let me do that. I'm just going to copy paste that. So I just cut that. I'm going to come over here to Solution Explorer.
Yeah.
I'm going to make a folder called models. There, I could have done a refactoring, what's called a refactoring, and
Yeah, you
pulled
could
that out
have
of
used
there.
Visual Studio to
But
make
I'm going to
this for
say
you.
person. So now I've just copied person, and now it's in a namespace MVA MVC
Models.
dot models.
Right.
Okay, I'm going to close that, and I'm just going to point out again. That's right there.
Yep.
The folder name isn't important.
No. But now you need to, so if you want to use person, you need to add the using so that you can say this class, the code that's running in here needs to be able to use types from this namespace over here.
Could I put the whole name here?
You can put the whole name
So I
in
could
there.
give it the whole name for
Yeah.
person, but if I have other things,
If you have many other things, or if you have if you move all this stuff around and you have lots of different namespaces and different models, these are just ways of you organizing your own code. So you do what feels nice about how you want to organize things.
Okay.
If this is good, this is good.
so let's say I have a bunch of models, so I want to
Delete that.
model.
Okay, so now at the top of this page, do at using,
Oh,
and then just put the
okay,
namespace.
so it's the same way in Razor as it is over here, except you say
C#.
at.
Exactly. Because and you need to add to say I'm going to use some C# here. Now there's an interesting thing you can do here. You just said I'm going to have lots of models, right? So there is a way that you can have a using automatically happen to all of your views, and that there's a special file called _view imports, which is in your solution.
So I already have this.
Yeah.
Oh, look at that.
If
So
you
there's
double click that,
view import.
it's even got some stuff in it. See, it's already saying using MVA MVC.
Ah, so let me guess. I can take this using,
Yeah.
pull it out of there,
Yeah.
stick it in here,
Yes.
and now
now-
every view.
Every view, it's as if every view has that like using that you just typed in here is happening on every view.
Now, why is person squiggly still? Is it
Why
not
is person
is it
squiggly?
not
Might not have
figured out
figured it
yet?
out yet. And you might need to rebuild and do some stuff like that.
Let's see if that works. So here it says
Yeah.
model person. So did we do that wrong?
No, we didn't do that wrong. That's correct.
Let me close it and open it up again here.
Now it works.
Nope.
So that looks like a...
No?
Yeah, it's blue now.
What's going on?
Looks like we have some timing issues here.
Ah, there's the problem.
Yeah.
So this is interesting. I moved person.
You did. But
I moved it,
so
and
now
he doesn't know
this is
about
the
it.
same problem we just had a minute ago with usings, right? So you moved person into a different namespace, but you haven't told the controller that it needs to go and use that namespace.
Well,
over
that's
there.
tedious, but fortunately, show potential fixes has some choices. So this is an interesting thing. This is a really nice feature of Visual Studio, and this is, again, the difference between an IDE,
Yeah.
an integrated development environment, and a text editor.
One of the differences, yeah.
Here it's saying, well, I can add a using,
To go
and
get
it'll
it from
even
over
show
here.
you what it's going to do for you.
Yes.
Or, look at this.
You can create a new person.
It'll just, no, what it's going to do is it's going to put the namespace in front of
so
this
add the
reference.
using, yeah. And then the ones
Or
below that are
make a
make a
totally
person
new one,
class.
which would
And you
be
can
great.
see the code there. What it actually would do is it knows it needs a birth date and a first name and a last name because you're setting him. So it would generate you that whole class.
And it'd be a totally different person than
It'd be
before.
yeah.
I'm going to do the using feature.
Yes.
And you'll notice that this now suddenly works. You didn't see anything change, but if I scroll up,
You've got that new line there.
that new line.
And that's the same because this is the same language, right? You're using C# in
That's nice.
in the thing, right?
So let's go back to where we were, and I'm going to pull this one out again in a group. So here's our controller. All right. And now down here, let's output our person. So I'll make a paragraph.
Yep.
Or actually, let's do, I don't know, for whatever, do an unordered list, and then a list item within it.
And then you go
so then first.
Oh yeah, yep. And then
Right.
you want to, and then now you need to get to your model, right? So now
wanna
we need to
use
do
my
at
model.
because whenever you're using, that C# code stuff, you need to put an at in. So go at, then type model.
Oh, you type model. You don't
Capital
type
M
person.
model. Now, the reason for this is you've said, by saying at model at the top, you've said this view is going to use this model. And now you have this thing here called capital M model, which is the model that got bound to this view.
I
So
see.
it is the at model is whatever the thing is that was passed into view from your controller.
So that means that for about, just for
Yeah.
about, model is person.
Yes.
But if I had maybe changed foo or changed index, model
something else.
wouldn't be person. It
No,
would be
it was
whatever I
something
said
else.
it was.
Yes. So it's whatever type you put at the top. So now when you go dot, this is the other thing about strong typing that we talked about. When you say dot
Yeah,
there,
look at that.
it knows it has a first name and a birth date and a last name.
And it knows it's a string.
Yeah.
And if I spelled it wrong,
It would be spelt wrong here.
so let me ask you this then. If I say first name,
Yeah.
but what if I did this? What if I said, view data and pulled something out, but
But you put the name in wrong?
I spelled it wrong.
Yeah. See, now, if you spell first name wrong, if you spell the top
Just
one wrong,
compiled.
yeah,
great.
everything is great. This is the difference between like having a model and just using view data. If you spell first name wrong, you'll get an error. Right? You'll get a red squiggly. It'll say this is wrong. You don't have a definition for this this thing called first name.
Okay.
But you don't get that advantage when you're using view data because it's not strongly typed. It's just
Okay.
a collection of stuff, and you can put whatever you want in there. We don't know what you put in there. There's just the only tell is that you've got some string inside your controller and you've got some string inside your view. As long as they both match, everything is great.
Okay, so I just finished that up and put in
Yeah.
last
So what
name.
happens if we run it now?
All right, let's do it. I'm going to run without debugging for speed. Let's take a look at this. And we put that in about, as I recall.
Yes. Look at that.
Look at that. Now that's interesting.
It's amazing.
Notice also the date of birth.
Has been.
And I'm going to take this window here and I'm going to snap it up against the side. And I'm going to take this one and snap it up against the side as well. I'm going to close that one. So now let's close these up. This is a real common scenario if you're doing development and you don't have two monitors.
Yeah.
You have the browser on the one side and you have the editor on the other, and you just
Yeah.
go back and forth. So birthday is a date time. So I'm going to hit dot again.
Yeah.
And look at
And you
this.
can do stuff in here. You're in code.
Yeah. So I can say something like toString,
And you could give it a format string.
and I think toString lets me go like month, day, year.
Yeah.
And see, this is what's great. You can experiment. Like, I don't know if this is right.
But now you can refresh it.
I'll
see.
hit refresh. Like, that doesn't look right.
Well, MM was
the
correct.
MM worked. Let's try DDYY with lowercase.
Ah,
Ah, that's cool. Let's try 4 Ys.
look at that.
Let's add dashes. And then let's remember that, no, I didn't like my dashes.
Doesn't like dashes.
Let's also remember that only Americans will do this. So we'll stick that over here. You know what I mean? Why my dashes didn't work? Let's try slashes.
Yeah.
You know?
Dash
So
is special.
You see that kind of experience where you're going edit, refresh, is what you're going to end up doing.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, that's the reason we built all of this stuff is, and in this case, you probably could have done that always, but this is what we always. This is the experience we see everybody doing. For those of you who are like a PHP developer or something, you're like, yes. So,
Of course.
Of course.
This is how
that
it
is the way that you develop web applications.
Yeah.
For an ASP.NET developer who's used to building ASP.NET, this flow of editing, edit, refresh, isn't necessarily immediately intuitive. It's not what they've been used to, and so this is kind of new for.
So let's mix a few metaphors here. We've got 2 things that I want to talk about. There's
Yeah.
Bootstrap,
Yep.
which is the framework that is making this reasonably attractive, and then there's also
Yes.
making some forms, and maybe we can combine both of those.
We can start to do that,
Is that
sure.
okay. So here, Bootstrap. You'll notice the menu right there. This is called the hamburger menu. You see how this rolls out like that?
Yeah.
That's because the browser is very narrow. Let's pretend that this is a mobile site, and that's my mobile phone, right?
Yeah.
And then if I get bigger, watch the hamburger menu.
Goes away.
That's also called a breakpoint, not the same as a breakpoint in Visual Studio. So if I'm over in About, it gets that menu for free,
Yeah.
but it's also getting some of the look and feel. Like I said H3.
Yeah.
If I said something else like H4 and hit refresh, it's going to look different.
Yeah. Now the interesting thing here is that we briefly looked at our layout page earlier,
let's
where
do that
the menu
again.
was, right? Nowhere in our layout page do we start talking about hamburgers and like we don't really say a whole lot. We don't write all the code to know about how to resize and all these sorts of things, right?
Yeah.
If you think about it, there's a lot of cool stuff going on there. We know how big the browser windows is, and we know how to move stuff around on the page,
yeah.
and there's all this crazy thing happening. But we don't really have to, explicitly talk about how that works in our layout page. So Scott's going to show the layout page here, and we're just saying this is how we want our thing to look.
Right. Now this is using an open source project called Bootstrap, formerly Twitter Bootstrap, now just
Formerly,
Bootstrap.
yeah.
I'm going to go and just delete all of these. Okay? I've removed all the CSS, the cascading style sheets, the look and feel.
That looks more like a developer's website.
But look at this. The menu
It's just a list.
all this time has always just been, again, see, this is interesting.
Yeah.
Here I am with my unordered list of first, last, right?
Yeah.
Well, it turns out
That's what my menu
the menu
was.
was that way the whole time.
Yeah.
That horizontal menu
Was
that
all because of
switched between
CSS.
horizontal and being a hamburger was, in fact, just a list. I'm going to hit refresh again.
And now it looks
back.
better.
So what they're doing is they're providing a whole list of stuff that you can
Yes.
use. Like you see this nav bar, class, this div, this division, this divider. I'm going to remove that and just
Yeah.
say, it's just a div.
Yeah, just experiment. See how we go. Bam.
It's gone.
Yeah. And that's because the Bootstrap is CSS, so it uses CSS classes to control how everything looks and how everything gets laid out.
Exactly. And things like, here we go, nav bar collapse. Let's get rid of that.
Yeah.
Hit refresh. Oh, now it's
always
not
big.
collapsed.
Yeah.
So you can start to learn about these things.
Yeah.
And
if you watch the other video series.
right. So this is all Bootstrap. We're not going to go too much into detail, but I want to point you to MicrosoftVirtualAcademy.com.
Yeah.
There is an entire training session, a whole series on building responsive UIs with Bootstrap. And it talks about all sorts of details. We're going to talk only about the most basics.
Most basic. And we give you just a little bit of Bootstrap in the file new template because we assume that you're going to want it.
Right. Bootstrap is a good start. And it
Yes.
doesn't necessarily mean that all of your applications need to look like this.
No.
There are themes that you can add to make your stuff a little bit
Lots of
simpler.
themes out there.
But one of the things that's nice about Bootstrap is the ability to build a decent looking form. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I'm not a
So let's
Bootstrap
go.
expert. Are you a Bootstrap expert?
I'm far from a Bootstrap expert.
Well, let's bring up the Bootstrap help
Yeah.
and
absolutely.
assemble a decent
A
looking
decent form. Okay, so let's start with a form.
All right.
Make a form.
Now,
And we want to make a new person. We're going to pretend we're going to make a new person here. Is that what we're going to do?
yeah, let's do that.
Yeah.
We'll do this. We'll say, I know that forms have input.
Yeah. And they have, so we want like a text.
So there's some text,
Yep.
and we'll call that, first name. This is kind of this is HTML that you would write yourself.
Absolutely.
And I'll just hit refresh. I got a form.
Look at that. We need a
Now,
button.
I think I need a label though, right?
Oh, I mean,
For
clearly,
first name.
clearly it's obvious what that text box is for. Surely,
I need to remember how to do this.
first name first. Yeah. Okay.
That's
cool.
the label for that.
Now, in true developer fashion, we will copy and paste what we just wrote and change the little bits that's different.
And no errors will happen.
Yeah, there'll be no typing errors.
So first, last, date of birth.
Yep.
Except date of birth is probably going to be not text, right?
Probably not.
Let's
What's it
see what
gonna be?
other types there are. And this is another great example of an IDE.
That helps you out.
It's telling me what's valid and what's not valid.
And you want to change the IDs of those?
ID first name, ID last name.
And ID birthday. Yeah.
Birthday.
So those need to match. And for those of you who, I don't know if some of you might be learning HTML and learning, so that for thing is important to put in.
Now look how weird that is.
Yeah.
You see how they look fine there?
Yeah. This is what happens when you just by default use just default HTML, right,
Yeah.
without any styling.
But Bootstrap has some solutions to make things a little bit
Yeah.
easier. Let me add a button before we do that.
Submit button. Type submit.
Type submit.
And then that's it.
And do I give it a
can.
value?
Yeah, you don't have to give it a value. Oh, well, you can just close and put submit.
Well, value in the sense of what is the text that's going to show up. See? I need
Type.
to have more than that.
Type submit in there.
It has to be like that. Okay? Doesn't do anything.
Does not yet.
All right, so let's look at what Bootstrap offers to make forms better. Okay, unless you know how to do this yourself.
Nope.
Okay, so let's go and.
I mean, even if I did, it seems like it would be useful to.
Well, this is the
show
kind of thing that
people
you're
what
going
we
to
wanna
want to do.
So you want to go click here and then look at like CSS. I can't remember if form is in component or CSS. So let's just click it and see.
So we'll go to Bootstrap Components.
And then there's a menu
it's all
down the
sorts of
side,
stuff.
which we'll need to I guess we need to make it bigger to see the menu. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, because Bootstrap is written with Bootstrap,
Yeah.
right? Ah,
And
here
down
we
the
go.
side
Look at
here,
this.
there's a forms button, build section, but it might be in the other part.
Panels.
Yep. So
Panels make basic borders and padding. I like that.
yeah, there is cool. So if you go to the CSS instead of the, where are we now? Are we on the component
I'm
section
on,
or the
yeah, I'm running
components?
over-
So we want to look at the CSS, which is if you go to the very top,
That'll have
there's
more
two
information.
sections. Yeah.
Ah, there it is.
Down here we have form.
Oh, look at that. See? All right.
So this gives you
Individual
an
form
example.
controls get global styling. So,
So you basically the thing here is this side always gives you the example, right?
groups of forms. There you go.
Yeah, so you can group the two things. You know, the label for your text box and your text box should be kind of grouped together logically, right?
Right.
Yeah. So I mean, you could copy and paste this and change the names around, or
So
we can
what
just
I'm
go
going to
in and
do
make it.
is put this back the way it was.
Yep.
Okay.
And then just start styling it
And
up.
I'm going to say, well, that's a group of
Two.
controls. So
Yep,
we'll
slash
call that div.
Exactly. And then the next one is another group of div.
Right. And then I would need to say to input
Class.
that is a
Yep.
form control. Now notice this. This is another important aspect of
Yeah.
Visual Studio. it knows about Bootstrap.
And it knows what classes you can give a thing. See, we could have just, if we already kind of knew the HTML we needed in here, the divs and stuff, and if we couldn't remember that it was supposed to be form control, we could have just said class equals and oh, they're form control, that's probably what I want, right?
Yep.
And worked it out based on the help we were getting.
Right. So
So
look
that
how
looks
nice
heaps
that
good.
one is. And I noticed
Yeah.
I've even got placeholder text. I went and added that.
Now, if you drag your page out, just first should
Oh, that's a
move,
great
right?
question.
Yeah.
See? That looks appropriate.
Now it looks the same everywhere.
All right, so let's group the other controls.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's a form group,
Yep. And then we want to give
and there's
group
a
up
form
our
group.
controls.
Figure out what to do with the button.
Yeah. Well, we can just leave it at the end outside of a form group if we want.
Okay. Not sure, there might be another way to put a panel around it. That's the thing that's great
is.
about Bootstrap. And then each of these is going to be a form control.
Yes. Then we
refresh.
refresh. Look at that.
See? So suddenly things
Great.
look now this button's kind of ugly.
It is kind of ugly. So there is a button class.
All right, let's take a look at that.
So
Buttons. So BTN,
And-
then it's the default button.
yeah,
So we'll go back over here. We say class.
equals BTN.
BTN.
And you can give multiple classes, which you guys
Yeah.
may or may not know. So you can
BTN default.
Yeah.
All
What
right.
happens if you use the other one?
Which one?
Danger. Button danger.
BTN
Was it
danger? Let's do that.
Button danger.
It's probably still the default though. It's
Probably.
default. The
Yeah,
default is danger.
Default and danger.
Given that it's us doing this, that's not surprising.
What happens when what does it look like now? Red.
Nice.
See, and if you remove danger, it's probably just not red anymore.
Well, and here's another really interesting aspect, right? Right click,
Yeah,
inspect
inspect.
element. You know, points us right to it and shows us the code.
Yeah.
We'll go and remove that. Now it's a
Yeah.
normal button.
Yeah.
Yep.
Nice. So this is a super easy way, especially this is a super easy way for you to make your forms look good, look reasonably good, nice enough, without putting a great deal of work into it. And it lets you focus on, especially if you're a developer that focuses mostly on the back part of the world, if you're focusing mostly on the business bit of this, you can use Bootstrap to make something look reasonable enough that people can try it out, and you can focus on making all of the business stuff in your controller work, and it looks okay.
Right.
Then you could go find a theme online, and then you can play around with it. And if you're not necessarily super good with CSS yet, or you're still learning HTML, you can still make some really amazing looking stuff as you learn, just by
Absolutely.
taking advantages of things like Bootstrap.
And we're just reading the docs like
Yeah, absolutely.
like you are. Like for example, I noticed that I can say class form inline,
Yeah,
which is a different kind of form,
and that'll change the way this looks, right?
and then
If we do this,
it's all in one line,
yeah,
except when I'm on a mobile phone.
yeah.
And if I remove that, it acts differently.
Nice.
All right. Now, is this this was all kind of manual HTML? Is this the right way for me to have done this in ASP.NET?
You can do all of this way, and it's fine, and it looks great, right? But how do we wire up the submit button, I guess, is kind of where you're, is that where you're
Right. So I want to
leading with that
understand.
question? Yeah.
Right now, I was doing gets.
Yes.
Just typing in help about.
Now, the nice thing about ASP.NET 5 is that, yes, you can just type HTML and then kind of make it work. So what you used to have to do to get like a form, what you would have had to do in previous versions of ASP.NET would have been like do an @ and then call a method that gave you a form tag.
Right. I'd come in
Would
here
go
and I'd
at
say
HTML,
get a text box, and it didn't feel like HTML.
Didn't feel like HTML. You don't have to do that now. So now in your form tag up there, you can just go in. You can say ASP-controller. See, you've got the help there, right?
Oh, look at that. So ASP controller.
Equals. Now, when it goes purple, that just means it's now a little bit special. It's not just HTML. We're also going to do some stuff to it,
Okay, so it's helping that tag out.
helping that tag out. So now we're going to say home.
I'm guessing now.
Yep.
Oh, see, action.
Now what else you got? Yeah. Look at that.
So we had one called about.
We did have one called about.
If I say about again, is this a different about? Is it a post?
That's a good question.
versus a
It
get?
would. Now that depends on what the next thing you type is. What if you type method now?
So we'll post some data.
Yes, that's right.
All right.
So now when you click submit, we now ASP.NET knows when you click the submit button, you should be going to the home controller, finding the about action, and I'm going to do a post to the about action on the
post
home
that
controller.
data, send that data.
Send whatever data is on this form.
Okay.
Right.
So, la.
Yeah, and what is this going to do?
Probably need to put in an actual date. I'll make myself really young. So it didn't really do anything.
Yeah. So, go back to our controller.
All right. So control comma, about, enter.
Yes.
So here's our get controller. This is the one that
is a
grabs
get.
get about.
Yeah. So, what if you put a breakpoint in here and press F5? What do you think about that?
All right.
What's
so
going to
there's
happen?
My breakpoint.
This is a way you can. This is one way of debugging. Like, what is this being hit here? When I press this button, is it actually calling my action, and we
Right.
just don't do anything here?
And it's okay to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you should. This is what you arguably should do, right? To work out what is going on.
Right. That's what we're exploring.
Because there's
there's our
my
get,
get.
right?
Okay, cool.
Hit continue, and we're back here.
Yeah, and you're going to put some stuff in again.
Okay. Submit. Now we're back
That.
here again.
Yeah, but what's happening here is this is just redoing the same thing. All this is doing is getting Scott and returning it to your view.
So this really is get or post or
it
anything.
is. It's anything because you haven't specified anything different. Right?
Okay. Do I need a separate method for post, or do I use the same one?
Normally you would create a separate one. Like it seems cleaner, right?
All right.
You could probably do it in here if you really wanted to, but
So public action result, the result of some action.
yep.
About. Can I have two abouts?
You can, but not if they're exactly the same.
Ah. So in this case, I need an about that's a little different.
Yeah.
And I've got a person
is
that I was
different?
making. I'm
Yeah.
sending a person.
Yes, you are sending a person.
So I can say person and,
P.
I don't know, person in or whatever.
Yeah.
P.
Absolutely. Now you can have two, right? Because
Because these abouts are different now.
because they're different. They have different
Okay.
arguments, right?
And then
So-
can I still return a view?
You can still return a view, and it'll return the same one. Are you
Can
going
I
to return
take that person and pass
person
it onto
in?
the view?
Absolutely.
Maybe I shouldn't take user input and turn around and send it right back out, but
Well,
for what we're
for
doing.
learning purposes, maybe yes.
I'll put a
the
breakpoint
thing
there.
that Scott's alluding to there is, you don't really know what's been typed into those text boxes.
Well, it could be evil.
coming in and be evil, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And then you're going to echo it straight back, and something bad might happen. But I guess in this case, you're echoing it back to the same person that just put it in. So
Okay, but this would be
do something, do
some
business
stuff.
again.
Do business.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
So should I try this?
Sure.
Okay.
What do you think's going to happen?
Well, I don't know. You never know with these things.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, for those playing along at home, you can
You can
just
guess
say
what
to
might
yourself
happen,
what's
but it
gonna
also
happen here.
might fail, and then we'll run off and learn about stuff.
That's exactly what my hope is.
that it fails and we learn.
Yeah.
I like that.
Look at that.
Multiple actions matched. The following actions match route data and had all constraints. So it said there's two abouts.
I don't know which one to pick.
I don't know which one to pick. Well, one should be for forms and one should be for regular
Yeah.
life.
And what is the difference between those two things in our scenarios? Now, we've typed it there as a comment, but we haven't told.
I see what you're saying. So
Yeah.
I would say that the other one is for posting data.
Yeah. And you can do that. Yeah, exactly. And you've done it via comments, but comments don't help MVC.
So these comments are providing no value. Is there a way to express that
There is.
with a person?
With a square bracket
Okay,
first,
so square bracket.
and then HTTP. Post.
Look at that.
Yeah.
So this is a way of saying this is for posting data.
Yeah.
So then I should probably go down here and say
This
that
one's
one's for
getting
get.
data. Yeah. And now when you do a post, and now let's see what happens.
Okay, let's restart. Okay,
Now what have we got?
let's find out.
And hopefully this is helping you. The way that we're going through this is kind of slow. We could have typed all of this out for you and just told you,
No fun.
but there's no fun,
Yeah.
And if you see those errors, now you have some idea in your head of what those errors might be.
Exactly.
It also covers up for when we don't know what we're doing and we accidentally make a mistake, right?
I would hope that we didn't get this far entirely on charm.
Oh, look at
I
that.
just did a post.
Yeah.
So look at this. So now we're back there, which means
So-
that it did route correctly.
Yeah,
between
both
here.
in the get and the post because we retrieved the page successfully, right?
Now in this case, we're still using the same view, but look at
Yeah.
this. I'm going to hover over person in. It knows that it's a person.
Yeah.
Now this is interesting though.
Everything is empty.
So it knew that it was a post, but somehow my person didn't line up
Yeah.
with my form.
So what's happening here is MVC, we don't really know which of those text boxes is first or last name or birthday, do we?
Well, I named them that way. Why didn't that work, right?
Yeah. So what you do
I
is
named, well, I didn't even really
we-
think about the name. I kind of just
just
gave
made
them
it up
random
as you went
names.
along.
It seemed like a good idea.
yeah.
Let's
So-
compare them. Right?
So they're not exactly
Not
the
ex-
same,
well,
right?
they're uppercase, lowercase, you know.
Yeah, there's some differences.
That's hard to keep track of.
So one thing you can do is do just like we did ASP action over in our other thing.
Okay?
You can do ASP-4 in your label in your input controls.
In my input. So here, instead of me having to be responsible for doing IDs and stuff,
yeah.
I would say you're saying ASP4.
Yep. And then equals. Yep. And then look at that.
Oh.
Strongly typed. It now knows the things that exist on this, and we can
Now-
say this is for this type in my model.
Do I get rid of the ID now?
No, well, you can, but you can leave it there as well. Like it's valid. You can then also say ASP-4 and give it a on your like the if we let's run it and look at what it outputs
With the ID there.
with the ID and without the ID. What do you think?
Well, let's do this.
Because
Let's-
we should show how you
let's
would
do
tell
the,
this.
Yeah, let's do the same thing with last name, except we'll remove
We'll
the
remove
ID.
the ID. Yeah, that's good. That's the way to do it.
Okay, so first name
And then last name.
has an ID and last
Right.
name
And then
does not.
And then we can run it, and then we've left the bottom one without anything.
Without anything.
So we can see what the difference is. Now, what this is about to show you is when you start telling ASP.NET about when you start like helping out the HTML by saying
Giving it
here's some extra information about how I want you to interact with MVC. MVC can be smart about what the HTML is that gets generated.
Well, that's
See
interesting.
this.
Hang on, what's going on here?
Yeah.
I didn't type that.
Well, but you told MVC that input is for the first name, and the first name, it knows that you were just given a class
Well,
which is first name.
I made one here.
You did, and you gave it to it. So now it knows, oh, I've got a person. The person is called Scott. I know this text box is for the first name. We better populate the first name.
So on the get, it
It
rendered it
stuff for you.
and then it didn't do birthday.
But that's because we didn't put ASP4
All
on
right,
that
so let's
one.
do that. So ASP.
We should look at the HTML of our page.
Oh yeah, let's look at the HTML
And then let's
as well.
change this. Yeah.
So I'm going to right click.
View source. Yeah. And we need to go find the elements, which you can also do by clicking the thing in here, right?
Do. So here it made ID last name ID, a
Yeah.
name last name. It made an ID and a name.
name, yeah.
Here it kept the ID that we put there.
Exactly, but it made the name.
It filled in what we
yeah.
were missing.
So you need an ID. You want an ID on all of your HTML. Like it's good HTML to have these IDs.
So really, we shouldn't bother doing this if they're going to do it for me.
Yeah, this is just we're going to do it for you, so you can leave that out. But if for some reason you really want the ID to be different, we'll go for it, right?
So now I'll say birth date. I don't need to do that anymore now.
Yeah. You don't
Do I need to do the type even? Will it figure the type out?
I believe it will actually.
Let's find out. Let's cheat.
Yeah.
Because if it's going to do work for me,
Yeah.
let's just, do
And once
lots of
again, it also doesn't matter if you specify it, right? You can give us as much information as you want. And often, I actually see a lot, people will end up with type equals text still in there because they do exactly what we just did, which is they write the HTML because they know HTML, and then they want to make it interact. Now they want to make it dynamic, so they'll throw in the extra dynamic bits and
look
not
at that.
necessarily remove everything else.
Okay, so let's take a look here.
And what do we have?
Oh, wow. So, but this is interesting because some stuff happened that I would not have expected.
Yeah.
Birth date, it knew that it was a date time,
Yes.
but it also added something.
Yeah.
Data validation. These are HTML5 isms.
Yes.
The birth date field is required. That's because you can't have,
It can't be null.
quote, you can't have null
Yeah.
for a birth date.
Yeah. So in the model that we provided, the class,
I'm going to put in a default.
you can't have a so you can't create a type. There's now we should have mentioned this back when that empty person when Scott first clicked submit. It didn't have. It was like null first of the first something, right? It was a date. It wasn't
Right,
null.
You can have this. That's a valid.
Those two can be empty, but you can't. It's not valid in C# to have a
No
date
date,
time that's
right.
no date.
A date has to be something.
Has to be something. Now we know that's the case, and we also know that this input form is for a type of date. So we've automatically given you the things to help out the browser to know that this is the way it is.
I'm going to add that placeholder back. So I noticed that it knows enough about dates to insist on one,
Yes.
and that gave me, like I say, and it's an HTML5
Helper thing.
ism. You know, it's an aspect of it. Oh, and look at this. Why? So this is another good error.
Yeah.
Can't reach this page.
Yeah.
So
you
what's
stopped running? The
yeah.
little thing is not there.
It's not here. So
Yeah.
I'm doing that without IIS Express.
Yeah.
So let's take a look at the validation that was created with the date. You notice that it knew that dates are special, so it made validation. But maybe I don't want someone with a really, really long name. Let's limit last names to, I don't know, 10 characters. How would I do that?
Okay, so how you would do that is, there's a couple of things we need to talk about here. The first is, how do you get the little red thing that says this thing is out of too long?
You mean the little red thing, like
Little
I
red
want the field to like brighten
you know,
up?
everybody's gone and filled out a form online, right? And you click the submit button. It gives you a little red like asterisk next to your next to the field that's broken. That's not
Right, it says,
valid.
First name is too
And
long.
then you get like a message at the top saying this is broken.
Right.
So there's a couple of bits we need to wire up to make that whole flow happen. The first thing is, we've been driving this whole form now from your class, right? From your model.
I see, because it knew that date of birth is a date time because
it's
if you look at public class person,
Exactly.
it's a date time.
And so the way that you control your validation then is to decorate your model with extra information that we can use to make validation happen.
I see, because first name is a string, but I never said that first name needs to be a certain length.
Exactly.
So also,
'Cause a string
I guess
can
it
be
doesn't
any
even know
length.
that first name is required.
No, it can be null, so it's not required right
So I
now.
want to make it required first.
Yeah, so now you can use square brackets as attributes, the same as what we used
Okay,
for the
square
HTTP
brackets.
get, and you can make it required.
So if I type in required, it's giving me a squiggly. Show potential fixes. And it's bringing in data annotations.
Yes, because what we're doing is annotating our model here to say this thing is required, this thing has a maximum length, things like that.
Okay.
So we can say everything here is required, right?
Well, birthday's required anyway, but I'll add it as well.
Yeah.
What about length?
So do square bracket,
Yeah.
and then type length, and do like use Visual Studio.
String length, maximum length. Oh, and look at that. I can even put in error messages.
There was also a max length in there too, right?
Yeah, so we'll say max length
Like a
is
max length attribute.
10. And then I can even add in other things if I wanted to, like an error message
Yeah.
and minimum length. Let's say, let's do minimum length too. You see here, it's saying, like, do I want to put in?
Yeah. And so for all those like loading developers out there, we are just about to make one of the most common and stupid programming errors that every
thanks.
website developer ever makes, which is that first names have a maximum length of 10 characters and that they have a minimum
It's
length of 1
complete-
character.
I'm being
and
completely ridiculous here.
exactly.
Yes, someone with the last name of A,
Yeah, that's right.
they can no longer
Now,
use our website.
I did some work with on voting systems, and you would not believe the variety and of people's names
Yes,
that
Mr.
break
AA.
all violation. All. The one in particular I could remember is there was a particular person called Shadow. That was their official name. Just one name, and it was called Shadow, and it was Shadow.
Rock on.
And so we had all sorts of validation built in, and that was
I
the first
respect
name.
that.
That was happened to be the first one that broke it. There were many others.
That's pretty cool.
But that was the one that sticks in my mind because it was unusual. But yeah, so for those of you learning to program and looking at this to program, don't
Think
do that
about
in the
your
real world.
validation. But
think
for
about
the-
your
for
validation.
what we're doing is just trying to show you that you can decorate.
you can do
this.
stuff. Okay.
So we'll do that.
Now just go back to our HTML.
Okay.
Let's
I'm going to hit
let's
refresh,
yeah, and see what it does.
and we're going to run this again,
Yep.
and then I'm going to look at the HTML that it made.
Yeah.
So we're going to say
And it's going to be
view
different.
source.
Very different. Should be very different.
Okay. So, form.
Form groups. There's our form groups.
Oh, look at that.
Yeah.
So, data val length min 2
Max 10.
and 10, and it even wrote, because I did not give it my
It
own
made
error
up a
message, it
reasonable
made
error
up
message.
a reasonable English in this case.
Yeah.
And then last name, while I didn't have the length validation, it did say is required.
Yes. So this is the sort of value that you can get from just letting MVC do its thing
So
and
let's
give you
try
stuff
this.
that makes
Let's,
sense, right?
Well, let's make
Fred.
Fred.
And then just Fred is more than 10 characters.
Is Fred? I don't think it is. It's definitely if you have 8 of them.
More Freds. Look at that. Okay.
So why did it allow Fred?
So we haven't done a few things.
Okay.
Okay, actually, first let's put a breakpoint in your controller for a second.
Because I said Okay. I want to put it on the
in the post.
In the post.
And I want to look at the person that it just made, and just show. We're just showing that it's happening, right?
Oh yeah, we got to make sure that it actually got Fred.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Because you'll do things in ASP.NET and in web development in general where you expect something and you'll go, wait a second.
I'm not
I
sure.
thought XYZ was happening for free.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
Fred. Submit. So we're back over here.
Yeah.
And I'm going to hover over person. And I see first name, last name, and then I got the whole thing.
Yeah, you got the whole thing, right?
Right.
Okay, cool. So
First name has a string length of
yeah.
10. Did I do this wrong?
No. So I mean, okay, this is an interesting thing as well, right? You can't tell now whether you did the data attribute wrong, if it's just string length, or if you did all of them wrong. So the first thing you can do to try and test that is, well, what if you just make one of them empty and click submit again? Do you get a different result?
Because
did you just mess up string length?
Good point.
Right?
Because they're
Or
required.
did we not wire up this whole thing correctly? Right?
Good point. Because these are, I marked them as required. I know that must be right.
Yeah. Well, there's nothing you could have gotten wrong other than it's required. So
Or there's
what did
something
I do
didn't
here?
need
Or
to
you
turn
haven't
on.
got all the validation worked out just yet. Right?
So that worked. This is a
Yeah.
required field.
So string length isn't quite the way we wanted to.
Okay.
So what happens if you look at the max length?
Let me put that in there. But look, first is the problem.
Yeah.
See?
Just first. Okay.
Because
so it
first
works.
didn't actually give me the required.
Yeah.
Okay.
So first is just broken.
First name seems to be broken.
So why is that? I wonder. Let's have a look at our HTML.
Oh. That says true. I don't
That's
know what
not
that
valid, though,
that's
so-
me being silly.
Pretty sure that's not part of the.
I typed that in myself earlier.
Right. So let's. Yeah. Okay. Cool. So now they look exactly the same here, right? So the difference we have though is that one of them has this string length thing and one of them does not.
And one of them has required.
And one
Maybe
of
I'll
them has
remove
required.
string length. Okay.
Yeah.
Hit refresh.
And we're hoping to help. We're hoping to help out all the new developers in the world. In like sometimes
We can
how
bump
to
into stuff like this all.
yeah. Sometimes how to begin debugging things that you don't necessarily understand is hard to work out.
Okay, so now it's working still.
Yeah, nothing is working, right? So what that means is adding required. Now, if we look at the HTML, there's no required equals true in here, right?
And now everything's falling apart.
Yeah.
It's
So-
chaos.
yeah, and there's some things that are missing in here, right? So if you go,
I'm going to make sure that my thing looks the way I thought it would look.
yep, okay,
Oops. I'm looking at how it rendered
yeah,
versus how I put it out.
yeah, which is different,
See, data validation true is there,
yeah,
but I don't know why that's not saying, hey,
yeah. So let's go and have a look at our layout page. Actually, there's a tangent. There's a tangent here that a slight tangent we can make to help understand some of this. Let's go
Yep.
look at your layout page for a second.
all right. So I'm going to hit Control, comma.
And this is
Type layout.
and what I'm about to show you is also another way for you to help debug these kinds of, to use the things that we provide to learn about how our stuff works. So if we scroll down to the bottom of this page, okay, we have some scripts being pulled in. We have jQuery, we have some Bootstrap, we have something called Hammer. If you scroll down a little bit more, okay, this is different, okay? So now what I want you to do is open a new Visual Studio, and I want you to do File New, and I want you to make a new web application, this time with auth selected. For those of you who have been watching our mail modules in order, which I'm hoping you probably are, earlier on we created an application and we turned off auth. And the reason we turned off auth is because we didn't want to complicate the whole thing with lots of MVC concepts that you weren't necessarily used to. Now there's a side effect of that. When you don't, auth also happens to have forms that create things and do validation, which means there's more in this page that we don't have because we didn't turn on auth.
I
And
see.
so what I'm
You
about
wanna
to show
see-
you is you can go and create a new web application, and it'll have all of the stuff that we don't have here right now, and you'll be able to see what it is, and you'll be able to learn from looking at the template and working out what it is that we generated for you, and then going on with your day, right?
I see.
So this time it's
So
already
what you're
selected.
saying is there's authentication in
Click
here.
go.
Let's see how they do it.
Exactly. This is the extra way of doing this. In this case, we're missing a bunch of stuff. We're missing some validation JavaScript that's in the layout page, which is what I just looked at, and we're missing some things like that.
Seems
right?
like, yeah, so that the question is that something that should be in that template?
Maybe,
or not?
maybe. I mean, we don't know that you're going to make forms.
Oh, that's a valid point.
Right. So this is the definition of empty, right?
Yeah,
you might say right now we should have that JavaScript and everything in there.
So
now if you
here
scroll
is the
down to the
layout.
bottom, we've got a whole bunch of stuff in here to do with validation. We've got some.
So where we got valid,
Let's see. We've got.
we
We should have jQuery.validation and a bunch of stuff like that.
let's
right?
take a look. So I'm going to make this full screen. Search for validation.
It'll be down the bottom, I think, in the
Nope.
thing. No, am I
What
missing
we
it?
do have,
Did we not put that in here?
well, what we do have though, is I saw over here this validation
Oh,
scripts
sorry, yeah.
partial.
The templates have been changed slightly since the last time I
So
looked at them.
validation scripts partial.
Yeah.
Let's see where that gets pulled in.
Yeah. So this is just us structuring things, but basically, if you go to views account, and you open up like one of these create ones, like yeah.
Or like login, I can see validation
See?
here.
You can see validation, and you can see
Look at that.
there exactly.
Validation
Yeah.
scripts partial.
Now there's a bit too much. There's a lot of advanced stuff in here that I didn't really want to dig into, but I wanted to go and to show you that this is how you would work some of this stuff out if you didn't do it.
I see. So the issue is these two right here.
We're missing these things, right? Yeah.
Validation. jQuery validate.
All right, so that's one of the things that we're missing, yeah. Okay, so we can go and copy that into our app if we
So
want.
are we thinking that we want to take that validation scripts partial and copy that over there?
I don't think so, unless we really want to talk about partials right now.
Okay. So we just grab these.
Yeah. So what's happening here is your partial views are a concept that they're a bit too advanced, I think, for
sure.
us today. But they're an ability for you to create sort of fragments of stuff and then include it where you need it inside your views and not repeat yourself.
Right.
Right. It's a dry principle for those of who
Right.
are thinking.
So here I'm copying in these two scripts.
Yeah. Now the difference between the way we're doing it now and the way it's done in the template is we're going to have these validation JavaScript on here, regardless of whether or not we're doing any validation on the page, right? On your home page, you're going to have this JavaScript be loaded.
That's right.
Even if you don't have a form there.
And well, interestingly enough, here is jQuery validate. It's in my application.
Yeah.
Those JavaScripts, those libraries that help us, like for example, this is the carousel.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And that's jQuery and
Yeah.
that's Bootstrap.
Yeah.
They're here, they just weren't added.
Yes. Now we spend a lot of time, and I wanted to talk about this. Part of the reason we went down this whole path, the way we went down this path, is we spend a whole lot of time trying to put stuff into the templates to help you learn. That as much as they are a starting point for you, they're also a point of reference for you and a way for you to learn about the stack and know how to do things. And they're a resource that potentially lots of people forget about that you really should use. Like go through them, and however we do things, that's our way to do things, right?
Well, I think it's also fair to point out that you get in these situations where you assume something.
And you
Like
maybe got
we
it wrong.
assumed that would be available.
Yeah.
But you also forget that there are more resources out there than just Google and Bing.
Yeah.
The default template is a resource.
Yes.
Samples are a resource.
Which is excellent. That was right where I was going.
I know. So let's take a look at something real quick. We're going to get this working, but
Yeah.
show me where I would go to github.com/ASP.NET
Yeah.
/home. That's where ASP.NET is.
Yeah. So /home has some samples. They're very simple. Okay. There's also like an MVC. So they're in the MVC repo there, right?
Okay, so we'll go to
MVC.
GitHub.
And you're like, hey, I need some. There's a samples folder, and this has got all sorts of stuff in it, right? Some of it's super. Now you shouldn't go now, and these I do not believe are set up to show you an example of how you should build a good web application, right? That's kind of what live.asp.net is
Sure.
about. There's all sorts of stuff hooked up in this web application.
They're exercise samples.
Exercise samples, yeah.
Yeah.
If you want to know how to do X, with MVC, there's a good chance somewhere in this sample
So let's
they've
look
set
at
it
this.
up that
In
way.
fact,
right?
check this out. Look at this here. Just
Yeah.
a couple months ago,
They added validation
someone said
summary.
new validation summary overloads.
Yeah.
And they went in here and look at this. As we said, exercise samples.
Yeah.
Hello. All
Make
these
a bunch
different
of stuff, right?
exercising how validation
Yeah.
works, which happens to be what we're trying
So
to do.
don't forget about these resources that are available to you. Not just stuff that's online as well, but you've got a resource in the box in Visual Studio, which is a generated website that you
Right.
know runs.
So,
And it does a bunch of stuff.
so I just added these two things here, and we're
Yeah.
going to talk a little bit about environments a little bit later on in the
Yes.
day.
So-
but the point is, we're in the middle of development right now.
Yeah, we kind
So
of. We should
at
finish
development time, we're doing this. So let's finish that, and then we'll come back.
that. Okay, so how far along are we now? Now we've just added that JavaScript. in.
So we've got required.
Yeah.
I'm going to go ahead and put
You want to put your thing back?
string length back.
Yeah.
Because it seemed like a good idea at the time.
Did, and it should have been very beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah. I hope,
I'm gonna
I hope,
go ahead and run that
tangent,
again.
I hope the way that we flow through this has been helpful to everybody.
Well, I think it's also good that if it works for us on the first try and it doesn't work for you, the viewer,
Yeah.
that can be very frustrating. And
Yeah.
then you're off on Stack Overflow
Yeah.
and you're like,
So-
this sucks.
Yeah, one of the things that I dislike, and we have a reputation for doing this, is that all of our stuff works amazing on stage. And you still have your breakpoint in, do you?
No, I'm actually running as I'm running without the
running
debugger.
without that. But
so
it's not-
what I'm noticing
But it's
is
not
that
submitting, right?
it doesn't submit,
It is making the last one blue.
but I'm not getting any error messages. I'm not getting any
Yeah.
pop-ups.
So we can fix that. So, it doesn't appear to be submitting, right? So
It's definitely not
not doing
posting,
something. It's not posting
the
back,
form.
right? So,
Okay.
and you would know that because you would see the spinny ball and stuff like that.
Right.
So what we're going to go now, if we go back, if we can quickly throw a span underneath each of your inputs.
A span. Okay.
Yeah.
So I'll
an
put a
element,
span
just
here.
element. Yep. Because you
Span.
don't want to do a div because a div has like a blind break at the end and it's going
Right,
to like throw
divs
off your
take up
layout.
space.
Divs take up space. Spans don't. ASP dash validation. It's actually right there at
Oh,
the
look
start
at
of your
that.
thing, right? And now you can tell it what you're validating for.
Oh, and look at that.
Yeah.
So this span provides validation
Yeah,
for
and there's
first-
also a bootstrap class where you can do class equals, and you can say text dash danger. Right. Ooh. Yeah.
danger text.
This is my moment of proving to people I do know something about this after our tangent of
Oh,
like
it's nice.
going through
oh,
the
but
debugging.
this is important stuff.
Yeah. So now look at that. See?
Interesting.
So now if you just copy and paste that for your other two, and you change the validation for, that'll happen for all of your guys, all of your paid input forms.
And is that all validation? Like, for example, one of the validations that we saw was the length validation.
We can try that here, right? So delete Scott. And
Go
then
back to
submit.
Fred.
Yeah, go to a max length. Yeah. And now
So that's the string.
yes.
Now, this is a really important thing to point out, and it's subtle, but some things happen for free on the
Some things
internet,
don't.
some things don't.
Yeah.
So we go over the DOM Explorer for a second here and look at the HTML that was generated.
Yeah.
I want to point something out. Let's take a look here. This string right here, the field first name must be a string.
Yeah.
That's living in an attribute
Yep.
on an input called first name.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean it's going to be displayed. It means it's available as a resource.
Yeah.
But what needs to happen is it needs to jump here when someone detects the validation
That's
error.
why it required JavaScript to be added to our page to start making all of this work.
Mm-hmm.
Because the way that you do things dynamically in the browser without going back to the server again is
Right.
you get some JavaScript, right?
Exactly.
And in our case, we're using these jQuery validation libraries. So there's another important tangent, I guess, to mention there. We don't want to go too deep on validation, but we could have very simply, at the very beginning when we started down this path, we could have just said in our controller, when the person came in, we could have just said, if first name is empty, go to a different view.
Yep.
Go to an error page, or go to the same view and maybe put some extra data into the view data to say there's an error here, right?
Right.
This is the difference between server-side validation and client-side validation.
That's a good point. So this is client side. Like when I make
Exactly.
There's
There's nothing going back to the server here. You're not using up resources on your server to validate this. It's just in the browser.
And we can prove that by going and putting breakpoints and making
Yeah.
changes and seeing
Exactly.
if those breakpoints don't pop.
Yeah, and now if for the security conscious amongst you, this is obviously possible to. It's obviously possible for the person who's running this form to bypass the client-side validation if they really, really want to. If they know a lot about what they're doing.
Right. So I just did your name and theoretical date of birth, and that then showed up here as well.
Yeah, because our stuff ran. Because we didn't hit the breakpoint that he's showing because he's not debugging. He just Control F5.
And if we wanted to extend this, we could even make it so the form is visible
yeah.
when you get but on the post,
That's right.
It's not.
It's not. And you could do things like when it gets into the controller, you could validate it again on the server if you wanted to be super careful. If you just in case you're really worried about people breaking into your site and then redirect you to a different thing. Do lots of stuff like that. And this is kind of how you would start to build up your flow.
Okay. So let's take some notes in our kind of conclusion here.
Yeah.
So we're using a thing called Bootstrap.
Yeah.
That's an open source library that includes a bunch of CSS.
And there's one thing we didn't talk about, which was a validation summary. Do you want to talk about
let's do that real quick.
Yeah, because it's not long. So in this, we probably want a div for this. So up above, at the top, above our first form group, let's say, but inside our form, let's go div, and we'll give it. We can do.
Oh, look at that.
Yeah, our validation summary. Exactly, it's a thing.
Do I have to add anything to it, or does it just sit by itself?
It does. You want to say dot equals. Sorry.
Yeah.
And you want to say validation summary dot.
Oh, what kind of?
What type of validation summary? Which only model validation or any validation that you can make?
Let's do everything.
Yeah. So we're generating a bunch of you could put your own stuff in here that the jQuery validation library thinks about that doesn't necessarily generated by us. Right?
And some validation might be on the server side, like important tax validation information.
And so now we have the summary at the top, which is all the problems.
So if I didn't want those spans, I can roll all of the validation up here and then label that as text danger.
Absolutely. Yeah, and if you add text danger to the class, it'll make it red, right? Because that's a Bootstrap style, text danger is a Bootstrap style, right? Cool.
Very cool.
And now it should be red when you do the thing. Yeah. Did you break it? I think you broke it. But that's okay.
With text danger? No.
You didn't? No, you did break it.
Oh, I did break it because, look at that, see?
Yeah.
See how this here, that's just going to sit there. So the mistake that I made.
Yeah, he didn't put he needs ASP.
I accidentally typed over the validation summary.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
Try it again.
Yeah.
See? And there you go.
Right, so this is basics of valid client-side validation.
Okay, so Bootstrap, that's a CSS library, it's open source.
Yep, there is some JavaScript in there as well, but it's all client.
Okay, then we saw how the difference between get and post methods on a controller.
Yeah, we talked a little bit, we talked about validation and client versus server validation.
We had a mistake / error.
Yeah, or at least we didn't really know how validation works, so how do we
didn't
work
work.
that out? Yeah.
So we needed to bring in the jQuery validation library.
Yeah.
And how did we debug that? We looked at a working sample.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
Then we noticed that there are validation for helpers, including a summary helper.
Yes. And you get IntelliSense for all of these. So as long as you know they exist, you can go find them just with the tooling you get inside the editor. The trick is just knowing that they exist and knowing that you need to look in order to get them in IntelliSense, right?
Cool. So there's one module, and we are going to take a break and come back with even more introduction to ASP.NET 5 here on the Microsoft Virtual Academy.
See you next time.